but my mom sent a book to me at one point. The name of the book was Snapping: How to Break Free from Cults.
Okay.
She thought I was in a
Oh,
cult,
wow.
and
Yeah.
uh, and it scared them back to church. And they actually ended up coming to faith. My mom, I mean, how many churches I've been in, and it seems like it's always the same thing. You've got 10% of the people doing 90% of the work.
Mhm.
And we've got to get away from a consumer base
Yep.
style of worship where I'm going to church and they're preparing to entertain me or to work in me. And fact is you go there to be equipped to go out into the world.
Yep.
What
Yep.
I'm seeing in our culture is that even though you've got all these social media opportunities and apps out there, it's the loneliest generation that we've ever had.
Yep.
People that are in social media, 73% say that they're lonely.
Yep.
How is that? And then
Make your escape.
Hey, I want to welcome you to another episode. We've got a great guest today, but before I go into his background, I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for emailing lastinlineleadership@gmail.com. As you know, we're having this challenge of getting 4 weeks of the book I created, the journal, the tracker, the handbook for life that I created. We're giving 4 weeks of that away if you email me, lastinlineleadership@gmail.com. Actually, even if you just DM me on Instagram, last_in_line_leadership. So thank you for all of your support. I want to welcome to the stage, metaphorically, Mickey Weston, who has 15 years of professional baseball experience. He was in the major leagues from 1989 to 1993, played for teams like the Phillies, the Mets, the Blue Jays, the Orioles, and then became executive director, fast forward a few years later, in 2015 for an organization called UPI, Unlimited Potential, where they create discipleship and mentorship programs and curriculum for baseball players, professional baseball players. And so the entire group is made up of former professional players, MLB guys, and they are pouring into this group that is now currently playing. Their mentorship, like I said, they create community. They're all about making disciples for Jesus. And Mickey Weston is joining us today. He's the chaplain of the Chicago White Sox currently, has been doing that for more than a decade. And so we're very lucky to have him. Thank you to Pat Combs, who connected us. Pat's a former Major League Baseball player, former guest here on Last in Line. And so I'm ready to dig in. We're going to talk about discipleship. We're going to talk about leadership and faith in Major League Baseball and some of the challenges, some of the rewards, and some of the great work they're doing at UPI. Welcome to Last in Line, Mickey Weston. Well, without further ado, let me welcome to Last in Line podcast, Mickey Weston. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, John, happy to be here.
Man, it's good to meet you. We got a mutual friend of ours, Pat Combs, who I'm very appreciative of. He's a former guest on the show himself. And man, you guys have a background together in professional baseball, and you're still around the game because you're the chaplain for the Chicago White Sox currently and have been for a long time. And you're doing some really good work with an organization called UPI that you're an executive director of now. And I went into all that in the intro, but man, aside from what's on your bio, is there anything that you maybe want our audience to know about Mickey Weston?
I am really, John, what I would like to be known as is similar to Paul. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 4:1-2, let a man regard himself as a servant of Christ and steward of the mysteries of God. in this case, moreover, it's required of a servant that he be found trustworthy. And so that really is my heart's desire, is to be that trustworthy servant of whatever the Lord places in our lives. And right now, I just came down here. You and I were just talking about it. My daughter just had our first granddaughter. I've got 3 grandsons, and in the room next to me is my twin grandsons that are almost 3, and I love being Papa.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Those boys.
Man, I tell you, the little baby, the new addition, the baby girl has you wrapped around her finger and doesn't even know it yet, does she?
Oh, yeah. I'm a goner already. She's gorgeous, and praising God for safe delivery, and
so good.
And I just can't wait. I haven't met her yet. I'll meet her tomorrow when
good.
When my daughter comes home.
Well, cool, man. And so I want to sort of peel back some of the layers on your journey, and you coming up through professional baseball. I want to kind of talk about your faith first, and how we got into what you're in now, which is discipleship, missionary work, mentorship programs that you're creating overseas and domestically through the game of baseball. And I got to say, I couldn't think of a better avenue and a better platform to do it on. That's pretty cool. So just, I mean, from the womb, you were a devout Christian, man of faith, strong. I mean, take us through Mickey Weston's journey a little bit up through your maybe younger adult years, teenage years.
Yeah, Mickey Weston was lost. I did not grow up in a Christian home. And really, as I was growing up, my parents got ticked at the church, and so we stopped going when I was probably about 5 or 6. And so growing up, my gods were football, basketball, and baseball. And it helped keep me out of trouble. My 2 sisters and brother got in a little bit of trouble with the drugs, and but athletics kept me out of trouble. But when I was about 16, and I remember going out in the middle of a field out behind our house, and I just looked up to the sky and said, God, who are you and who am I? I know that something's missing in my life. And I was a star athlete. I was popular, had a lot of friends. I was an honor student, but I knew right then something was missing. So I made a decision to start to go to church on my own. And I went to a church that didn't really talk about the gospel or a relationship, but more of a do's and don'ts type thing. But then my freshman year of college, a guy from Campus Crusade for Christ came and brought a swimmer. The baseball coach allowed them to come in and speak to the whole baseball team. And a swimmer shared his testimony of how he had tried everything until he entered a relationship with Christ. And that's what was all the difference. And as he spoke, my heart was racing because I knew that's what I had been looking for. So set up a meeting February 15th, 1980, Friday afternoon in Jones Hall, room 102, and committed my life to Christ that afternoon at about 4:30 in the afternoon. And then the guy that led me to Christ, Dave Borm, discipled me for 2 years. And really helped to create that vision for my life to be a disciple of Christ. And God kept me in the game. I actually excelled in the game, got drafted by the New York Mets, and met my wife at the Crusade meetings. And as we started our journey in professional baseball, really felt like we were missionaries to baseball. And praise God, the Lord, he kept us in the game for 15 years. And about halfway through, I got introduced to UPI. Went on my first mission trip in 1986 to South Korea, to Seoul. And God just gave me a heart for the world, to take the gospel to the world through baseball.
Yeah.
And so,
that's so good, man. Golly, thinking about as you're talking, I'm thinking about that pivotal moment in college and where so many forks in the road for kids are, even if they go to a Baptist student union or an FCA night and they have this just encounter with God, right? And it's a life changer and transformational spiritually. sometimes they don't always stay there because of what you said, that one word, discipleship. That person discipled you for 2 years. That right there could have been the make or break moment for you. Talk about maybe how, I don't know, I mean, if you're around that college environment or what you saw then, what could we do better to maybe follow those kids and disciple them? Or what was it about that guy that really stood out to you that made him stay consistent over 2 years? Because you can say a prayer with somebody and you're like, all right, man, you're good to go, you're going to heaven, and then you kind of lose track of people. What was it about y'all's relationship that stuck?
I think because of number one, it was intentional. When Dave Borum led me to Christ, he said, now I'm going to walk with you, because he really took that mandate, the command from Matthew 28, verses 18 to 20, where it says, Jesus made the statement. He said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. And as a result, now go, therefore, make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and lo, I'm with you even to the end of the age. And so what we need to understand as followers of Christ is that's not a suggestion by Jesus. It was a command. There are 3 commands in there. Yeah. Really. The command isn't to go. It's as you're going, make disciples, baptize them, teach them to observe all that I've commanded you. And so Dave took that imperative, that command seriously, and he wanted to pass it on to others. And so he challenged me to become a part of what they had back then called an action group, which was a high level Bible study. There was another athlete, a guy that's been my buddy for, my friend ever since. And he's actually on their student venture staff. But all 6 of us that were in that Bible study were in some kind of full-time work, full-time ministry, vocational ministry. Yeah. And he just poured into us. And I think it's one of the things we need to do is we need to take that command more seriously. Agree. He didn't say go make converts. Yeah. He said go make disciples. Yeah. And it starts in the home. It starts with the parents catching the vision that my disciples are the kids under my feet. So we disciple our kids, but then the people that God places in our lives, but you have to be intentional about it. Yeah, that's 100% agree with that. Was there a moment? Sorry, I mean to go back real quick, but was there a moment when you had, because that was a mature, I guess, point in your life for being what you said 16, where you went out and you kind of said, hey God, like I need you, and you started going to church on your own. Not many 16-year-olds are that driven enough or independent enough. So was there a pivotal moment that caused you to get sort of to the end of yourself? Because you had everything going for you. So what was it that you think made that, kind of stirred that up in you? No, I think it was really, when I look back on it, John, I think it was just the Spirit calling me. And there were some Christians at my high school, and I remember going to like a couple Young Life meetings, but I didn't get it at that meetings. I knew there was something there as they were singing the songs. My heart, it was just the drawing of the Spirit. Wow. Okay. At that time. And just opening my eyes up to my need. Wow. And I think God's doing that in a lot of people's lives, but they ignore it.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
They just don't see that it's God is the one that's calling us and wanting to transform it.
I mean, that's impressive. That's probably pretty rare for a kid to feel that moving in his spirit and be obedient to that, and then take the initiative to be consistent and go. And you said it earlier, intentional about going to church, even though it's hard to do that when your parents aren't equally yoked in that way or like-minded with you. It's hard to do that. But man, it was funny you mentioned that.
As a matter of fact, after I came to Christ in college and really started growing, I didn't have a lot of wisdom. I came home with guns blazing, wanted the rest of my family to trust Christ, and I should have just let them see Christ in me. But my mom sent a book to me at one point. The name of the book was "Snapping: How to Break Free from Cults."
Okay.
She thought I was in a
Oh,
cult,
wow.
and
Yeah.
and it scared them back to church. And they actually ended up coming to faith. My mom, right before she passed away, and my dad. It took almost 20 years before he came to faith.
That's incredible, though. I mean, you did lead by example, even though you, I like how you put that. I scared them back into church. Well, what you said was interesting, about how we don't take that Great Commission always completely seriously, or if we do, we don't always walk it out. And I would just add my 2 cents to that, because I totally agree that I believe a lot of us don't feel like we're in ministry. And I'm not
Hmm.
speaking for when I say us, I'm saying the collective group that thinks that's just for vocational ministers. And I'll push back on those people and let you elaborate some. But in Ephesians, it talks about we're the saints, right? And so the job of the church is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So we're all in ministry. And so I think, to your point, like, the reason we don't take it serious sometimes is that's for those pastor people, to baptize people, to share the gospel, to get them, to believing in Christ and then walking in those ways. You anything to add to that? Am I right on, or am I crazy by thinking that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that's where we have to change our approach and how we do handle ministry, and even from the pulpit, from whatever ministry you're involved in. Discipleship has got to be at the center point. You can have evangelism without discipleship.
Yeah.
But with discipleship, you also get evangelism. It's just a natural part of the teaching. But that has to happen right from conversion, when a person understands that in any church. I mean, how many churches I've been in, and it seems like it's always the same thing. You've got 10% of the people doing 90% of the work.
Mm.
And we've got to get away from a consumer base style of worship, where I'm going to church and they're preparing to entertain me or to work in me. And fact is you go there to be equipped to go out into the world.
Yep.
And
There's something to be said for being filled, for sure. And so that you can, the Bible talks about he who waters will himself be watered. I mean, there's something to that, getting restored, getting refreshed, and then going. There's a reason for it, though. So you can go out and use it. So as we fast forward a little bit, you're in the major leagues, right? Or you get drafted by the Mets, right? And so I don't know, you most likely didn't go straight to the majors. I kind of know how this whole progression works, but
I was more suspect than prospect. It took me 7 years. I was a 28-year-old rookie in the majors.
Well, good for you, man.
Usually after about 7 years, you're done if you haven't made it to the majors. But God kept me in the game, and actually took me a year. I was in my last year of AA. And I developed a sinker. I'd been working on it for a year with the pitching coach. And in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I remember when it came off my finger and the bottom dropped out, and less than a year later, I was in the big leagues.
So then, I'm curious. So it took you 7 years. During that time, you say God kept you in the game, but you weren't exactly, most likely, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you probably weren't that whole 7 years filled with all this hope and encouragement that you were going to make it to the show. Like, you might have been a little discouraged, but what kept you in it? Was it that you realized you had work to do as a disciple maker, as an evangelist? Did your faith have anything to do with you staying in that space and being around those guys?
Oh, absolutely. I was planning, because I spent 3 years in A ball and then 3 years in AA. But when I was in A ball, I actually took the GRE. I was accepted at Georgia State University in a exclusive counseling program I was going to become a Christian counselor.
Mm.
And John, one of the things that I teach players and people that I have opportunity to work with is that it's easier to steer a moving ship than one that's dead in the water. And so we keep moving, and then God can steer us the direction he wants us to go.
That's good.
And so as I was playing ball, I was still pitching well. I was a pitcher. And I was a good organizational guy. So the organization kept me around. The Mets were stacked at the major league level. And so it really became a log jam. But I still continued to put up numbers. And then it gave me the opportunity. And I really think this would, a cool thing happened that third year in AA. I had some coaches come to me and try to teach me how to cheat, on how to get more movement on a ball by cheating. And went out to the field.
Little petroleum jelly
Absolutely.
behind the earlobe. There you go. Okay.
Absolutely. And there were some guys that they had taught in the system, and they made it to the majors by doing that. And I went out to the field and, practiced it one day. And at the end of the day, the coach asked me, well, what do you think? And I said, you know what? If I can't do it on my own talent, then I'm fine with that. I'm not going to cheat to get there.
Yeah.
And it was almost like that was a test. And it was really shortly after that I developed the sinker.
Yeah.
And
what year was that?
That was in 1988.
Okay, 88. So they had already won it. When you mentioned the Mets were stacked.
Yeah, they had won it.
That was 86. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you were, through no fault or credit of your own, you were going to be there in the minors a while with that, like you said, that team they had in 85, 86, 87. Like that was they probably didn't need a ton of help.
They did not need a ton of help. They had all the pieces to it. So I don't know that I ever really thought that I was going to get to the big leagues. I was just trying to be faithful right where I was, and not worry about the stuff I had no control over.
Yeah. And that's what we talk about when I'm talking about this breakthrough theme, and I think breakthrough is encouraging to people, because so many have been, will be in similar places like yourself, where there's a season, and it's not just a 5-minute season. You were 7 years, 8 years before you really realized the dream and broke through. And so there was a lot of forming in you, a lot of shaping, a lot of disciplining, in you. But once you get there, I guess the rest is history. And you played on, I don't know what, 4 or 5 major league teams, or in major league, in those franchises and those programs, man. You came out of that probably with a huge network of guys and probably a faith circle, because you gravitate toward those folks. How did that springboard you? Because you started in you went on a trip in 86 with UPI, and you came, how many years later did you hang up the cleats and then decide, I think UPI is where I'm going to be? Like I'm called to be there.
Yeah, once I went on that trip, I started traveling with UPI every off season. And then within a couple of years, started leading trips for them overseas during the off season. And actually, it was on a trip, I believe it was in 1993, where I went with the director, and we went to Far East Russia to see, just right above North Korea. There was a missionary there that he was good friends with, that I actually knew. His wife was one of my wife's best friends growing up. And they wanted us to come and check it out. And so we went, and we just had an incredible time of sharing the gospel. And one in particular, one of the coolest stories of my life was we got asked to go and see this gal in the church. Her dad was dying of cancer. he was in a hospital, and she asked if we would go and to try to talk to her dad. And we agreed to do that. And so we go to the hospital and talk to the nurse, and she directs us to this room right at the end of the hallway. And we go into that room, and the room couldn't be any bigger than maybe a 6x10 room. And here's this man laying on a cot. And I walked up to him, began to talk with him, and then I knelt down next to the cot and began to share the gospel with him. And one of the most powerful times of sharing the gospel for me, because I felt, and it didn't happen, but I felt like I was standing back and watching Jesus talk to him. And, you're thinking in Russia, all his life, he's been hearing there is no God.
Yeah.
And now I'm telling him that God knows him and loves him. And this guy repents and he trusts in Christ. And there was an immediate countenance change over this man. It was almost as if there was a glow about him. And he had tears streaming down, but they were tears of joy.
Mm.
And I told him, I said, I will never see you again this side of eternity, but one day I will see you again.
Yeah.
And so we walked out, we're high-fiving each other. We can't wait to get back to tell his daughter, who we thought was his daughter, and the nurse is running down the hallway yelling, "Niet, niet, niet. No, no, no." And I'm like, "What'd we do?" And she goes, No, that's not her father. Her father is up on another floor. And we go up to see her father, and her father will not talk to us, will not give us any time whatsoever. But the Lord, the Holy Spirit, knew where to send us to this man at the end of the hallway.
It's incredible.
And that was a stake in the ground for the director of UPI. He just saw God's call on my life. And so it was 3 years later, in 96, before the season, he asked my wife and I to pray about coming on staff with UPI.
Yeah.
So we prayed through the season and made the decision at the end of the season.
Yeah.
To come on staff.
Well, that's incredible. And so for those that don't know, Unlimited Potential International, I'm going to say, is the I incorporated. Okay. Unlimited Potential. So as you're ministering abroad and domestically through the game of baseball, right? Because all of your staff are former players. Is that accurate?
Right.
And so you are ministering domestically too, right? Here in the United States, you're a chaplain on a Major League Baseball team, and maybe, I don't know if you've got even other chaplains from other teams that are on staff or not, but talk about this.
Two of our other staff are Major League chaplains, and then the other staff are minor league chaplains.
Okay. So what is the unlimited potential? I mean, obviously we all know what those words mean, but in the context that you guys are ministering, what is your main primary focus when you go talk to, I don't know, a team, or you go talk to a corporation, or whoever you're ministering to here? What is your mission? What is your goal? Is it to create disciples? That's the end game. But is it to create a mentorship program? Is it to just disciple them? Is it to train them and then watch them downstream benefit? Like, what is your main mission?
Well, UPI exists for discipleship. It's personal discipleship. Each one of our staff have a handful of guys that we are personally discipling, or we have players on different teams in small group Bible study settings. All of it is really for discipleship. But probably the three main things that we do really well, that UPI does really well, is we do a lot of mentoring with these young players, because God has given us great favor because we played the game. So we've walked in their shoes. We've been faithful. We don't ask them for anything. We go to give, which is unusual for them. It's usually people are wanting to get close to them to get something. Mm-hmm. But we're pouring into them as mentors, creating community, because we really understand that, and we understand what Jesus talked about in John 17 of wanting us to be unified so that the world would know that the Father sent him. So we're really good about developing community, whether it's on teams that we're ministering to or just getting guys together in the off season. So we do mentoring, community, and then practice, helping guys to really put into practice the teaching. Because, if we're just teaching concepts, that's okay, but that's not where transformation happens. And that's really what God is really all about. What Jesus is all about is transforming our lives.
Yeah.
And seeing us becoming like Jesus every day.
Yeah.
And so we've got to practice it. And so we really help guys to work on the practice.
That's good. Those are three good. I mean, those are three pillars that are essential. I can imagine. So when you go to another country and you're doing a mission trip, it's not like you can come back from that trip and disciple them over Zoom, right? So you've got to, maybe you can interact occasionally, but you've got to sort of equip leaders over there to carry that out. And then, so my question would be a two-part question. Like, take us through maybe some of that what that model looks like, because that's an interesting component for me. And then, what do you see over there about these people that have this breakthrough that we're talking about, and they accept Christ and they're on fire? And man, what do you see that in their eyes that may be different here than what we see over here with domestically? I guess I'm indirectly saying we take a lot of stuff for granted here, and over there, they're just thankful to see somebody come and just want to pour into them. Right. And so there's got to be a big difference in the two. So talk about a little bit about that and kind of the model going forward once you guys leave the country.
Yeah. That's where the challenge is now, because number one, you say you're from the US, and unfortunately, so what's happened a lot in the past was there were just people were, whether it was the missionaries came in and they said, "Hey, I'm taking over," or whether it's they were given handouts.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is trying to help teach them and empowering the locals, the nationals, to do the work of the ministry.
Yeah.
They can do it a whole lot more effectively if they have good training than what I can, because they're going to be there for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
I can go there for 10 days, 2 weeks. And a lot of times that's what our ministry does, is we come alongside a missionary or a national church to elevate their status in the community by us working with them, with the people in their communities.
Yeah.
And so we elevate that, but then it's an equipping them to do the work. And how can it be sustained? And that's one of the hardest aspects of when you're only there for 10 days. Typically, that's what our mission trips are, of having a ministry that is sustainable, that is going to continue to grow in that. We do have opportunities to stay more in contact today than we ever have. Mm-hmm. And so you can do some of it over Zoom, but that never can replace the face-to-face.
Yeah.
And be with them.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of training, and we've helped to train in Japan. I've been going to Japan for over 20 years and really help them get, especially the one church, Hongodai Christ Church, became a catalyst of training other pastors throughout Japan on how to do sports ministry. So we worked with that church for a number of years exclusively, and then it just started a ripple effect. And they caught the vision, because I really believe, John, that sports and music or drama are two of the quickest ways to make connections with people.
Yeah.
And open doors to share the gospel.
Yeah.
It just in Japan, they told us when we first went there that it usually takes 7 years of consistent contact before Japanese will trust in Christ. And through athletics, we're seeing kids within a couple of years make decisions.
That's incredible. And speaking of baseball, I would think you have some presence in Latin America, because that's a saturated environment for baseball talent, man. I mean, that's not a secret. So are you getting some warm reception there, and you guys making some headway down there?
Very much so. We've been in the Dominican since I played there back in 1987 and 88 in winter ball. And so we've been going there since then, in Mexico. The great thing about those countries is the Latino, and even in professional baseball, is made up 46% of professional baseball players are Latino.
Right.
And so they have a respect for God, but they just need to understand that it's about a relationship.
Right. And I would guess a lot of that's attributed to Catholic upbringing for the most part. And I hate to generalize, but I would think in that environment,
That's
I know
true.
it's a high Catholic environment. And, but yeah, that's awesome, because that's prime real estate, for those people spiritually because they kind of already have a basic foundation. And so you just direct them into, like you said, the relationship component.
One of the other questions was what is it really that hinders here?
The different, right. Yep.
And a lot of that is there's so many distractions here.
Sure.
And I think that's a part of the work of the enemy, is to keep us so busy that we won't stop to look at where are we spiritually. And so there, overseas, there isn't quite as much going on. Or you go to the Dominican, where you have all kinds of stuff happening, but relationships are so important. And sitting down around a meal, a lot of places around the world, a meal is huge. And if we would get back to that a little bit more, I think that we would see, we'd have more opportunities to develop relationships.
So do you see that in the baseball community too? I mean, I guess obviously they're very distracted because and I'm just going to speak from the major league standpoint, they're such in the limelight. All eyes are on them. Everybody wants something from them. And so they're, of course, technology and those kinds of things, modern conveniences, and plus the contrast with a Major League Baseball player or Americans in general is average household income in Dominican Republic is probably 1/1000th or maybe even higher than what it is here. So there's not time to go, there's not money, resources to go do a bunch of other stuff, right?
Yeah. The average income in the Dominican is $5 a day.
Yeah.
$5 a day.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
In here, there's just it's unlimited. Yeah. And in here, what I'm seeing in our culture is that even though you've got all these social media opportunities and apps out there, it's the loneliest generation that we've ever had.
Yep.
People that are in social media, 73% say that they're lonely.
Yep.
How is that? And then when we had the pandemic these last 2 years, it's separating people, and that's what the enemy wants to do. He wants to separate people out, just like a lion or a pride would do. Go look for that weak individual and separate them from the crowd all the time.
Of course. And for a society that's so connected, to be so disconnected is pretty perplexing. Is there anything we can do, like to go and support you guys, or any ways we can get involved?
We need folks that will pray for us. We need that prayer cover. And I've even talked about that of developing a prayer team of people that would consistently be a part of it. We're in it's a unique ministry, because people look at it, oh man, you're ministering to major leaguers. Well, we minister to major leaguers, minor leaguers, but we speak a lot. We do there's a lot of different things that we do. And so there's not a ton of ways where we can plug individuals in to what we're doing. Even though I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But really, if those who are listening to this would consistently, you can go to our website at just upi.org. We have all kinds of resources on there. Like we've got Bible studies that we've already made up that anybody can access and utilize. And we want to stay faithful and true to who the Lord has called us to, and to minister extremely effectively.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I would say too, let's just in a perfect world, let's say there's people like me that want to get involved, and yeah, we can go to the website, donate, send a donation. Or I think just what you said, the resources you have available, just like anything else associated with baseball, there's pipelines. So on the ground level, if I'm involved with my community and a high school baseball team, and I want to minister to those kids, guess what? Those kids, some of them go to college and play. Guess what? Some of those kids, they go to the professional level and play. And what if you get in contact with one of these kids that actually was in a group that started using your materials at the high school level? Like, it's all about a pipeline, in my opinion. And baseball there's no better example than what a pipeline looks like. So maybe that's a way we get involved, is use your resources and start at the ground level.
Yeah. And we've actually had that happen. And had a chance for, a guy that came into pro ball, and immediately we're right here ready to help disciple them.
Yeah.
To get them to grow, to plug them into community, to mentor them in the game. And, that's really, it's, John, believers that aren't involved in other people's lives, they're missing out on the greatest adventure.
Yeah.
It is so much fun to be able to be a part of discipling somebody else and seeing the light go on, and helping them to really understand their relationship with Christ.
Yeah. It's nothing more rewarding. And so, Mickey, I appreciate it, man. We'll have the link to the website in the show notes of this episode, and we will get people excited about maybe even just reaching out to find out more information about you guys. Maybe there's an email newsletter they can get on to get regular correspondence from you guys, and maybe that's a way we can kind of step up too. But I appreciate your time, audience. He's been Mickey Weston. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.
Make your escape.